the Prepare Like a Pro podcast. This week on the show we have Phill Merriman. He's the high performance manager of the Fremantle Dockers. Previously, before being at Freo, he was the head of strength and conditioning at Melbourne Football Club. Was also part of Hawthorn's strength and conditioning team from 2011 to 2017. So had a lot of success there, where he held separate roles in both rehabilitation manager and a physical performance coach. Prior to commencing his career in the AFL, he was coaching multiple hockey teams in the Victorian Premier League. And before we start this episode 29, the Prepare Like a Pro podcast mission is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge with some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please follow us on Instagram as well as subscribe to the podcast. We're on YouTube, iTunes and Spotify. All right, I'm just going to invite Phill on now.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Go, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Thanks for jumping on.
Dramas at all. Good to be here.
Anthony Fernand's just jumped on there.
Oh, the Fern.
Fern. I don't think I've seen him join one of these chats, so good to see Fern getting amongst it.
Me and Fern have got a great relationship. Actually, I think, he's a ripping man and a great physio.
He sure is. Yeah, I was lucky enough to get to know him at my short stint at Hawks, so yeah, we worked very closely with the young boys. Good boy, good man, doing big things now as well. Thanks for everyone for jumping on as well, guys. Just a reminder that if you want to send a question for Phill, we'll spend a few minutes at the end of our chat for a bit of a Q&A, so you can hit the question button at the bottom of our screen to send through a question. We'll dive straight into it, mate. You've had a good career in this strength and conditioning game. Take us back to the beginning. When did you recognise you had a passion for fitness or strength and physical preparation with athletes?
Yeah, it probably wasn't early on. I was a field hockey player. I had a bit of skill, but I didn't really have a great deal of fitness, to be honest. And it wasn't in my repertoire to be, I guess, a high level preparer for the game. And then once I'd finished school, I found a passion again for the game. I went overseas, did a bit of gap year work teaching PE. I came back and I was actually enrolled in a design university degree. And when I came back, I just thought, wow, that's so far from me. It's not funny. Not a very creative person. So I enrolled in a fitness course, just one of the Cert 3 or whatever it was back in the day, early 2000s, with a mate of mine, did the personal training course, started personal training, did the Australian Strength and Conditioning Level 1. And that's what really spiked me when I was probably about 19 years old. The course was run at the VIS, and there was a guy there called Chris Hink who's well known in the conditioning circles. So he spent some time, he won a flag at Geelong with running the Geelong program. And he was also running the VIS hockey programs at the time. And I thought, wow, that is a job that I would really like to do. So that started me on a course of, I guess, my bachelor and then into my master's. And the rest is history, I guess. Out of the master's, I started working with a very well-known man by the name of John Quinn. He wouldn't like me saying the word guru, but he's as close as we can get to a guru. He taught me a lot of things the hard way. And then I found myself at the Hawks and Melbourne and so on. So that was my journey.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. So with the PT, you mentioned you were 19 years old when you did the AFL Level 1 and you were doing some personal training. Were you training people with that Cert 3-4 course, or was it?
Yeah, no, I spent 10 years personal training from 19 all the way through all my uni. And I kept going. Once I was doing some ex-phys clinic work with Quinny, I was still doing some personal training. And during that time when I was personal training, look, I didn't know how important it was for my development as a coach. I've watched a few of your chats and most people say the same thing. Those formative years when you're learning to coach, you're working with 65-year-old women who have been divorced and in a real rut in their life, and you've got to help them through that. You're working with 14-year-old boys who are trying to make it in a sport at that age. You develop your softer skills more so than when you work in an industry like the AFL. So looking back on it, it's such a valuable time in my career development.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, there has been a bit of a trend amongst S&Cs, which is interesting, getting that, like you said, the softer skills and the personal side of things. The art of coaching does take you can read about it, I guess, but you do need to be able to apply it on the fly, don't you? And humans are pretty complex. Oh, that's really cool, mate. It's good to get an understanding of your journey to where you are today, which you're at the highest level, which is cool to hear your journey from the very start. You mentioned that you're a hockey player yourself. I've never played hockey, but it seems like there'd be some similarities in running patterns and acceleration G-cells to footy. When you did that AFL Level 1, were you set on a particular sport? Did you think footy was going to be the one, or were you open to where your journey sort of took you?
Yeah, so I had to retire from hockey early because of a bad hip injury. So that also took me into field hockey coaching. When I first started the journey, when I saw Chris Hink at the VIS, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be at the VIS in the institutes, and that probably until I got a job in footy, that didn't really waver. I was still pretty passionate about working in the institute. I never got to do it. When you're talking about the movement patterns of footy and hockey, they can be pretty similar. I sort of think midfielders in footy are pretty similar as far as their in-close, short, sharp movements. I know there's been tactics and techniques used by both sports that have been borrowed from each other. I'm pretty sure Batco did a lot of work with the Kookaburras back in the day and working on his press. Hockey's pretty well known for being quite attacking with their pressing. So yeah, that's, I guess, in short, I spent, as far as my field hockey coaching career, I spent about 10 years coaching Premier League in Victoria, which again was a huge part of my development. Did it across 3 clubs. So yeah, that's been immense as well.
So that was you were the tactical skills coach, not strength and conditioning coach, yeah?
For hockey?
Yeah.
No, I was the head coach. Yeah, right. Not strength and conditioning. At almost every other club, every club that I coached, I brought someone in to do the S&C work because it was just a different voice. I didn't really want to delve into that area. I wanted to focus on the tactical side of the game. So, yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned how personal training has helped shape the softer side, your strength and conditioning later on. What about the fact that you had 10 years experience of the tactical? Because that's a unique skill set that I haven't met many S&Cs that have done that. Does that help you, the relationship with the skills coaches at the clubs that you worked at, Melbourne, Hawthorn, Fremantle?
I think so, but I wouldn't say a great deal. Any of the footy coaches out there and hockey coaches, once you're in it's very difficult. Once you're in a mindset of the way that you want to play, it's very hard to bring in, say, some ideas from another sport and go, all right, put that in your program. So over time, there's probably been a couple of windows where I've been able to have a little bit of influence as far as the football program, but not a great deal. Where I guess the skills from my field hockey coaching comes from is being able to, one, talk in front of groups, but also being able to talk to coaches because I've been in, I guess, their shoes, but also being able to talk to board members and presidents and doing board reports and all that sort of stuff. They're all introduced to me as the head or senior coach within hockey. And obviously that's a big part of my role now, reporting to boards and committees and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a skill set in itself, presenting as well. So it all helps. Oh, that's amazing, mate. That's good to hear. So then you mentioned Quinny. So he's someone that's had an influence in your career. Did he connect you to Andrew Russell at Hawthorn, or how did you come into working at Hawthorn Footy Club?
In a roundabout way. It's a bit of a long story, but through my hockey circles, a good friend of mine who brought me to a hockey club is Dr. Peter Bruckner, who's been a massive part of my career development, as he has with pretty much every physio and every doctor around the world, really. He wrote the book that they all study. So, yeah, he introduced me to John Quinn. Started working with John and worked with him for the best part of 2 years. And then Peter actually moved to Liverpool Football Club. And by coincidence, Peter Burge had left Hawthorn, who's the current very successful high-performance manager at the Tigers. And there was an opening at Hawthorn, and I rang Brookie and just said, do you know anyone at Hawthorn? And through sheer coincidence, at that time, Andrew Russell was at Liverpool, at Anfield, on a fact-finding mission, basically. So he was able to drop my name in it. And then Jack rang me when he got back to Australia, and I was lucky enough to get the rehab role at Hawthorn. So it speaks a fair bit to luck, number one, but also the networks that you create are pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew was doing a bit of research, was he, at the Liverpool program that...
Yeah, he was going around Europe. He was looking at a bit of the altitude training stuff that was around that time. So he went to, I think he was in Sierra Nevada or something, and then popped across to the UK to see a few football clubs over there.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. And that was a part-time role, rehab back then, or was it?
No, full-time, on a part-time wage. That's what you got to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's footy. Yeah, no, it was full time, and I took it as more than full time. I just delved right into it. I wasn't attached to any girlfriend or anything at the time, so I could get my hands real dirty and really get to know the place. And it was terrific years at Hawthorn.
Yeah, great timing. So that would have been like the 3 premierships.
Yeah, so I started it late in 2011 and finished in 2017. And I mean, some of the people that I've just mentioned have helped me along the way. Obviously, Brookie and John Quinn. Andrew Russell has been massive in my development. Watching him go about his business at the Hawks Andrew Lambert, another one of your mates who's been huge. Luke Boyd, who's obviously the current Hawks physical performance manager, and we used to bounce ideas off each other a lot in the office back in the day, and it was such a great environment where we were all working together. I look back on those days and I could walk into the doctor's office and he'd take me through scans, which would help me in the process of working out my rehab plans, and it was a great time. And moved to Melbourne and under David Misson, who's another outstanding man in the game, and Rob Jackson, who was at Melbourne at the time as well. He's a big part of me. And then more recently, Darren Burgess. So I've been so lucky to have such amazing role models and mentors along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Melbourne, Dave Misson was high performance manager for the first year, was it? And then Burgess had time under Burjo, so you were head of S&C. And then you had your rehab at Melbourne as well. Yeah,
so I took a break from footy for the summer, and then just got to where Sarah and I had my firstborn, Harry. So I got to know him over the summer, and then I took just a part-time role at Melbourne Footy Club, and that was under Misso, just as the rehab strength coach. And then that went to full-time role the following year, doing a sort of broad range of things. Then Misso decided to take off to Toronto with his wife, who got a great job over there, and they sort of reshuffled the decks for half a year, and I guess put me in charge as the physical performance manager. And then the following year, Burjo came in and got stuck in. So good time and good people.
Yeah, fantastic. And did you mention you had a summer off, as in you left footy for a summer?
Yeah, no, I got out. It was partly, I think it was just, I was probably getting a bit stale at Hawthorn at the time, but there was also a travel element to it. So it was taking me, I was living in Moonee Ponds and we were driving out to Mulgrave. So losing 2.5, sometimes 3 hours a day. I was leaving before Harry would awake and then get home just as he was going to bed. So it was partly a bit of a lifestyle choice. And then during that summer, I went back to PT, group training, found a little bit of a niche market of, obviously Sarah just had a baby, so I found a niche market of mothers group that wanted to get fit after having a baby. So opened up.
9:30.
Yeah, that's right, followed by the coffee and all of that. And there was a bit of personal training, but a little bit of babysitting and all of the above. So that was good. I wouldn't say it was the best time of my life, but I still enjoyed it, and then got back into it sort of around the start of the season that year.
Wow, that's incredible. Just the fact that you made that decision for yourself and your family, and then got back into the system as well so quickly, and then it's just been pretty much linear progression since you did. So obviously you made the right call. What was that, a gut instinct feeling that you made that call where you just felt you had to start?
It was. I sort of went home one day and back to Sarah and I said, I'm just really struggling with going out here. And she said, well, just quit. Just go and do something else. I thought, and I sat on it for a few days and then went into Jack's office and just said, I think it's time for me to move on. So, and that was it. And it was, looking back on it, it was, at the time, it wasn't a hard decision. Probably moving into February, March the next year, I was sort of thinking, oh, geez, have I made the right decision? But looking back now, it was a great decision because I got to spend time with Harry and have a bit of time off.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. And it's good because there'll be developing footballers listening, absolutely, for them, but also for the S&Cs that are listening. You've dropped a lot of gems along the way in terms of, that one there, listening to yourself and looking after your family and your core values. So that's, and then you are where you are now. So it all worked out, which is awesome. So that's great news, mate.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
so
mate.
Fremantle came on board. What was that process like? And obviously interesting year with COVID and everything else since you started.
Yeah.
For those that don't know what a high performance manager does, what would be a way that you'd explain your role there at Fremantle?
Yeah, I mean, a high performance manager is a pretty varied role from club to club, but generally I'm the guy that gets all the information from all the S&C, the reconditioning guys, the physios, medical. Doctor and I sit together and plan a lot of the stuff, both in the reconditioning and main program. And obviously a lot of the information has to carry across to footy managers and coaches. I'm the guy that plans the main group's team loading and make sure that the strength program, along with Dan Zaknich, is complementing the work that we're doing outside on field. So that's a very quick answer to your question. The way that it came about was last year in the hub. We were up in Cairns and I caught up with an old mate of mine, David Hale, who's a three-time premiership player at Hawthorn, and asked just what was going on at Freo, and he just inquired and I ended up getting an interview, which was great. Highly recommend going through those processes. Even if you don't get the job, you're adding to your tool belt. And then, so ended up getting the role over here, much to Sarah was happy that I got the role and she was excited, but we'd actually just built our forever home, which is,
right, yep.
I think in about 13 days we're going to get the keys to hand over. Yeah, well, I won't be able to live in it. So, and Sarah, I think she's still over in Melbourne with the kids and they'll move over whenever the borders open to Perth. So, yeah, that's where I got to.
Yeah, we had some good news today, so things are opening up back in Vic, so Sarah should be able to come over soon. Sure.
Yeah.
These 5 days are working for us Australians. You guys set the tone over in Perth, and they're not bad. Little circuit breakers.
Yeah, little circuit breakers. The Perth crew, the Perthenites over here didn't really know what to do with 5 days. Was like a massive shock to their system compared to the Victorians who know how to do it and do it well. So yeah, a bit different over here. Yeah.
So yeah, you've mentioned we've had a good chat about your journey. What about for developing footballers? You've seen a lot of high level footballers from a few different clubs now. Is there a consistent trait that you see, whether it be the mental side, the way they go about their craft, or the physical side in terms of their athleticism? Is there something that with the Fremantle developing players that you focus on as a fundamental area of their game?
Not. I wouldn't say particularly we focus on, but I guess one of the traits that I've noticed across all 3 clubs is the ones that can play 200 games and are very successful in their career. They never lose the curiosity to become better. And that plays out in a range of different behaviours. Sometimes it's out and out, just getting in front of the coaches and just doing constant extras, and in the gym, making sure they tick every box. Where can I do more? Whereas there's another way of the subtlety of just getting things done in your own time, unseen. So that curiosity is something that becomes habit for these players. And no matter where you're a 2-time Brownlow medalist, Nat Fyfe, or Luke Bruce, All-Australian, absolute superstar, they're always on the quest to find out ways to do things better. That would be the trait that comes up the most in all of those athletes. And then I guess our role is to be able to harness that and work with and foster that curiosity and make sure they're getting the most out of their training by training smart and making sure they don't do anything silly, because athletes are athletes and they'll always push the boundaries. Not always, but they'll regularly try and push the boundaries, and it's just about educating them on what they can do at the right times.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, I love that curiosity. Have there been athletes that surprise you where they get drafted to the club and then the coaching department or staff have recognised that they're not showing signs of curiosity, but then they do later on in their career? Like, do you think it's trainable?
Yeah, I think it is. And that's just through I guess, if you've got leaders at your footy club, using Hawthorn as an example, that can drive that type of behaviour and that culture. I don't like your word culture, but that drive that type of behaviour, it sort of gets ingrained into the club. And the ones that don't do the work or aren't curious about becoming better, they get found out pretty quickly and they get spat out pretty quickly. And there's plenty that come in. In fact, I'd say 60 or 70% of the young guys that come into clubs, they don't know how to train and they don't know how to be curious. And it's an education piece on coaches, strength and conditioning, even medical, about how to best learn these behaviours. So it's very rare that there'd be players that come into the system that are ready to go. They've got to learn it all.
And what's important for them to be able to make that change? Is it being comfortable in the environment from a psychological point of view, or how do the different teams, medical, strength and conditioning coaches, how do you guys go about doing that or creating that change?
It sounds like an easy question, but I think it does also depend on the environment that's created within the footy club. Some footy clubs are player-led. Hawthorn was very much a player-led environment where players drove the standards. And when there was issues or where there was things that came up, it wasn't coaches or S&C or medical standing there waving their finger and yelling at them. It was more around let the leaders know, and the leaders will deal with it. So it does depend on what sort of environment you're going into. Sometimes you'll have to be the bad cop. Sometimes you'll be wrapping your arms around them and making sure they know they're supported, whether it's becoming better or whacking them over the ears for turning up late regularly. You've got to understand the environment to make those decisions.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome, mate. I appreciate you sharing that intel. To the guys watching now, for you guys to ask the question. So, Ethan, you got the first one, mate. How did you get into the high-performance industry? You may have mentioned this one earlier, but...
Yeah, so my initial entry into the high-performance industry, Peter Bruckner introduced me to John Quinn, who had left the football industry, left Essendon Football Club, and started his own performance rehabilitation business at Olympic Park Sports Medicine. So I started working with him as the S&C underneath him, and later became the ex-Phys. And then I was doing a little bit of work when John left and he went to GWS Giants as the high performance manager. I started doing some work with their underage athletes that were living in Melbourne, and we would go up in the school holidays and do 2 weeks of work with the footy club, and then go back down and I'd train with them at their school. So that was my entry point into elite sport. And then from that point, I was planning on potentially moving to Sydney to join the Giants full time, but then got the call from Andrew Russell and got started then.
Fantastic. This one's from M. Taylor. What's the biggest thing you look for when hiring? Tips for application process? He's a sports scientist.
Good question. One of my most important things to ask an applicant has nothing to do with their craft and what they do. It's got more to do with who they are as a person. So where have you come from? Tell me a bit about yourself is generally my most important question. As long as they've got, and they usually the applicants have come recommended from people within the industry, so I know that they've got a level of competence, and making sure that we get good people within the footy club or the environment is the most important part of. And what you can find out is that when they answer the question of who are you and where have you come from, you get a bit of knowledge about how hard they've worked to get to that point and how hard their parents have worked and all that sort of thing. And it's nothing to be ashamed of to talk about your parents and what they've done in their life. Gives you a bit of an insight of the upbringing and the type of person that you've got in front of you.
Fantastic. That's great advice there for Taylor. Andy Shandy has written it in the comment section, so I'll just have to scroll this one here. What key points make a good leader? Can you coach leadership? Question.
What key points make a good leader for me? And again, it differs from person to person, but first and foremost is that you've always got the group's intentions at the front of your mind, not your own. So or group or club or whatever it might be, that you're always front of mind, you're making sure that what's required for the group. That for me is big. Can it be coached? Can it be taught? Oh, that's a good question. You can probably manipulate it and synthetically bring it into someone who may not have that ingrained in them, and they can almost fake it until you make it sort of thing. My feeling is you have a good level of leadership built into you, and you can allow that to grow and foster. Not every one of us are leaders. That's just not the case.
Yeah,
some people aren't born to be leaders, and that's okay as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. Andy, Simone Austin has just mentioned as well. She said that's doing a round of interviews tomorrow, so I'll ask that question, Phill. There you go.
Who is that, sorry?
Dietitian from
Oh, nice.
Hawthorn. So there you go. You never know where these things lead to. Thanks, mate. Well, thanks for jumping on. It's been a great chat. I've definitely got plenty from it, and I'm sure all the footballers as well as high-performance staff that are watching, sports scientists, S&Cs have got plenty too. So, yeah, really appreciate you coming on, and it's been a great chat, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, mate. I hope everything's going well in the gym that you've opened up there. It looks pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, we'll have to have, Hal's doing a good job, mate, and we're doing our best to create a good sort of different experience for general population. So like you mentioned, the personal training side of things, bring a bit of athletic training to everyone, which is not out there in the market at the moment. So it's been fun.
Great stuff. Love what you're doing. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, awesome, Phill. All the best for the season coming up as well, mate.
Thank you. Cheers. See you guys.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the chat, make sure to subscribe to our iTunes, Spotify, or you can follow us on Instagram. And if you're interested in working with one of our AFL experienced coaches, head over to our website, preparelikeapro.com. We work with people both in a one-on-one capacity as well as online training programs. And you can join over 1,000 athletes by subscribing to our website, where you'll get free training programs and presentations from us. So head over to preparelikeapro.com to subscribe, and thanks for your support for watching the chat with Phill tonight. We'll speak